Let's see. I got my white sheets with the holes in them, my charcoal from a blackface. I'm squinting my eyes. Let's get my shirt off and wet my back. I think I'm ready. Oh wait, let me go crack my wife on the ankles. Okay, now I think I'm just racist enough to read Border Town. The whole time I read this, I kept checking the cover because I swear this was a Black Mask book. It's got all the trappings: ethnic lesbians, ridiculous SJW monologues, all the white people are racist, it's written by a wannabe edgelord, and it's got weird everyone's ugly art. It's hard to believe this is a Vertigo book. This is the first one from the new line, and boy is it the sad little book that couldn't. It's actually not as bad as I expected it to be. There are some good concepts in the book. I really like the use of Aztec mythology. There's not enough of that, and there really should be because it's really interesting and very different from anything most folks are familiar with. Unfortunately, writer Eric Esquivel is more interested in taking on identity politics than telling a monster story the book is supposed to be about. Border Town is a perfect example of why you should keep politics out of certain stories, or at least use a metaphor. Esquivel had the perfect setup with the monsters crossing the dimensional border. He could have played with the whole illegal immigrant thing by showing that people are fearful with reason, but that every monster isn't dangerous. It'd be obvious what he was really doing, but then he'd at least look at things from the opposite perspective. Instead, we get this kid named Frank who moves to this place in Arizona called Devil's Fork that's beset by illegal immigrants, both human and monster, white supremacists, lesbians, and the ugliest people imaginable. Oh, Enrique. ¿Qué está haciendo? What could have been a fun Latin-influenced monster tale is nothing but a 22-page rant about how white people who live on the border are Nazis. The book would almost be tolerable, but in comes the art. Ramon Villalobos does the art for the book, and I just don't like this style. I'm not into the whole ugly pop art thing. It just doesn't work for me. You can tell that Villalobos took his time with the art because it's competent. It works. The paneling flows, you can follow the story visually. It's inconsistent in some places, like when Frank goes to class. His face changes in every panel. How do you miss that? I'm not saying I've never done it before in a rush, but if you're taking your time, don't you want to put your own character on model? If Villalobos lost the ugly pop art look and cleaned up the style, I think I might like it more. But overall, it's not that the book is badly drawn, it's just not my thing. Now, back to this half-assed story. It starts off with the pages released a few months ago, with the obligatory white supremacists going to attack illegal immigrants crossing the border. And of course, they're this innocent familia just innocently crossing the border to enter Arizona illegally. No problem there. Look, I don't want to get too political here, but as liberal as I am, dude, you can't just enter the fucking country. Okay? You can't. We have immigration laws, and if you want to live here, you're more than welcome to apply for citizenship or claim asylum and prove that you need it. But you don't get to break the rules of my country and then try to sell me this viajamos millones de millas para llegar hasta aquí. No, you didn't. Come in legally and we can talk. I get why you want in. This is the greatest nation ever. How great is America? America is so great that when my slave ancestors were freed, they didn't leave. Even during Jim Crow with lynching and shit, they were like, yeah, it's still better here than anywhere else. So I get why you want to be here, but you gotta follow the rules. Can't just come into somebody's house uninvited and act like they've got the problem. Anyway, the rednecks are on patrol when they stumble onto the Mexican family getting murdered by this demon-possessed Mexican. Okay, nice diversion. It would have been better if you left out the racist white people bit because it had nothing to do with the scene. Honestly, if you'd started with the family crossing the border and then getting killed, it'd be a perfect opening. Instead, Esquivel has to make white people look bad because, white people be racist. Then we meet Frank, his Irish mom, and her obligatory douchebag boyfriend. While they're chatting away in the car, some weird shit comes out of the radio and goes into Frank's nose. None of this is explained at all in the book, so I don't know what it's supposed to do to him. That alone would be a problem because it doesn't make any sense, but the scene itself is a chore because it starts with this hit against Arizona not having Martin Luther King Day for a while, and it's like, that's what you lead with. Dozens of venomous snakes, the last state to honor MLK, and supposedly no black people in the state. Okay, I'm sure all the woke people who won't read this book are just chuckling it up, but those of us who actually read this need to take a few minutes while our eyes stop rolling. Then we get to see these wild boars munching on the bones of the Mexican family, and these three couldn't be less bothered by it. When's the last time you saw wild boars eating bloody human carcasses? Come on, man. I don't care how oblivious these folks are supposed to be, somebody's gotta take note of that. Now, Frank gets to school and meets some kids. Quinte, a kid in the luchador mask the school would totally make him take off, and Blake, who's racist because he's white. Oh, don't act surprised. You knew all the white characters would be racist. The only one not racist is Frank's mom, although we really don't know that. According to SJWs, you can have biracial kids you take care of and love, and then hook up with another not white dude, and still be racist against their race. That's some hardcore curb your enthusiasm, fuck me like your people fuck my country racism right there. And speaking of hardcore, let's take a moment to notice Blake's hands. He's got this X on the back of them. When I saw this, I assumed that he was straight edge, basically a punk rock marker that you don't do drugs. According to Escobar, who supposedly is straight edge, white supremacists also use the X marker. Okay, don't you think you should have told readers this? That's so specific that most people wouldn't even know, and it will confuse people like me who know about straight edge. Then we meet the obligatory lesbians, Amy and Julieta. I'm sure it's Julieta, but fuck it, why should Enrique have all the racist fun? So Julieta tells Frank that Blake is an alt-right Nazi and accuses Frank of being racist. Now, I want you to understand the setup here. Frank doesn't know anything about Blake. Julieta knows Frank doesn't know anything about Blake. She then confirms this with her retarded gotcha questions, and then demands that Frank proves he's not racist. You're accusing someone you don't know of being racist because he randomly spoke with someone he didn't know was an actual racist. You have to be so woke to think any of this is cool. And it just gets worse. Frank decides to defend himself against this bullshit by saying, wow, okay, well, let's see. I listen to Japanese thrash metal when I work out. I follow Kumail Nanjiani on Twitter. I've seen Steel so many times I wore out the VHS tape. Wait. You only listen to J-metal when you work out? Still racist. You follow somebody foreign on Twitter? Still racist. You watch Steel all the way through. More than once. Oh, you're definitely racist. And you're a liar because there's no way your teenage ass watched anything on VHS. Enrique, amigo, check your pop culture references. So then this stupid fool jumps up and is like, oh, and I'm half Mexican. And look at the smug look on this bitch's face. She's like, got him. First of all, where does this ever happen? Ever. Where are people getting so riled up that they're shouting their race when someone asks them to prove they're not racist? Second, what the fuck is this follow-up with Julieta telling Frank that he's not half Irish and half Mexican, but he's Mexican and Irish and American, all three fully, and all three simultaneously, 300%. What the fuck are you talking about? He's not fully Mexican and Irish. We can actually test this, you know. We can tell with testing the actual percentage of where your DNA comes from. It's impossible for him to be fully ethnically a member of both groups. He could be both if one was his ethnicity and the other his nationality. And speaking of which, American is a nationality, not a race, dumbass. You can be American and still belong ethnically to any other group. You can't be this dumb. You can't. So Blake finds out that Frank is a half-breed and challenges him to a fight after school. But before that happens, we get back to the actual story. You remember that, right? There was this thing about demon-possessed people. Yeah, I know it's easy to forget things like story when you're so woke, but let's dip off for a little bit so we can get back to, oh fuck, here we go. We've got demon-possessed, probably racist cop. We've got demon-possessed, actually racist tiki torch carrying Nazi. We've got ugly white ladies screaming about urban teenagers in hoodies. And a demon-possessed, not actual Bane. I get showing that the town is being taken over by demons, but you could have left out the politics. You didn't need to take the cheap shots to set up the invasion. You could have just had the invasion. This is exactly what's wrong with this book. Take out the politics, and it's fine. The story is actually interesting. The characters aren't much to talk about, but the concept alone is enough to keep my interest. But leave in the politics, and you waste half the book on this ridiculous who's a racist bullshit. And this is how the book wraps up too, with Frank beating down Blake, who calls him a fascist. SJWs keep using that word. I don't think it means what they think it means. Blake's friends give him a gun to shoot Frank, and then this other cop, not the first one, shows up, gets possessed, and attacks Blake. Retarded Nacho Libre shows up out of nowhere and attacks the cop. Julieta takes Blake's gun, shoots the cop, and then they run away because more cops show up. We then find out that Julieta is an illegal immigrant, and she could be arrested and deported. Honey, they could have done that before your ass shot the gun. At this point, Esquivel might as well end the book. He's busted his SJW nut, so we're done here. But no, he decides after spending 90% of the book proving his wokeness, he wants to tell a monster story. Now you want to tell a story? No, I don't care. You wasted all my goodwill with these pointless scenes about racism that have nothing to do with the monster story you're telling. Now, had you made the people crossing the borders monsters or played on the idea that they're actually fleeing these monsters, that'd be different. Esquivel kinda implies that in the car scene with Frank, with him saying maybe people aren't trying to come to America but trying to flee from trouble. That would shake things up. It'd also give the audience a quick way to sympathize because people would understand running away from monsters. But no, you want to preach to the congregation that never comes to church. Oh, sure, the far left has nothing but praise for a book where the entire story is about real-world racism, even though it's supposed to be a monster story. Go ahead and look up the reviews. Nothing but praise. But let's be real, these people aren't going to buy this book. We already know this because we've seen this happen dozens of times. And yeah, I know DC is bragging about how the book went to second printing. Let's see what the actual order numbers were for the first printing, and let's see whether or not they overshipped this book. Border Town was supposed to be Vertigo's best foot forward, but it's barely mid-tier Black Mask. And if this is really what these books are about, the stupid identity politics, then who are they for? Who's reading these books? Who's gonna buy them? Who's supposed to enjoy this? Because, like I said, the far left ain't buying the comics. You've gotta do better than this. Every last progressive writes the same story each time. You always have some arrogant woke jackass who beats up ever so convenient bigots. And that's pretty much it. That's all you do. This is why people are saying to take the politics out of stories. You have a good concept here, Enrique, but it gets bogged down by this racist bullshit. Lose the politics and just tell a good story. If you want to tackle real world issues, use metaphors. That keeps it from being too on the nose and it lets you explore all sides of an argument. Trust that your audience will understand what you're trying to do. If this is what to expect from the new Vertigo line, I'm not impressed. The book isn't as bad as I thought it would be, but I just can't get past the political angle. When 90% of the book is race baiting, I don't see any reason to give you another $4. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.